Just ahead this week on Money Matters. Fostering growth for new startups in Korea, Google's campus opens its doors in Seoul. What makes the mega capital such a magnet for business? Korea's sweet and savory snacks scale new heights in the global market. Which treats are gaining popularity? And small but integral, Korea's parts and materials industry is becoming an increasingly important growth engine for export. What stories matter in Asia? We'll look at the changing landscape of business in Korea and the Asia-Pacific region next on Money Matters. Hello everyone, I'm Hans Schadl. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin now with some of the top business headlines across Asia this week. Consumption in Korea fell to the lowest point in a decade during the first quarter of this year, and the country's aging population is at the heart of the downward trend. Statistics Korea says the ratio of consumption to disposable income averaged 72.3% in the first 3 months of 2015. That's down 2 percentage points from the same time period last year, and the lowest first quarter figure since Stats Korea began compiling the data in 2003. Analysts say many older people are delaying consumption out of concern about lower income during retirement. Japan has filed a complaint against Korea before the World Trade Organization over the issue of food import bans. Japan is arguing that Korea should stop its import bans and additional testing requirements for certain Japanese food products, especially seafood. The extra measures were put in place after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in March of 2011, and Korea continues to defend the restrictions as necessary. Japan has also protested similar measures taken by Taiwan and China. Korea has 60 days to respond directly to the complaint before Japan could ask the WTO's dispute resolution panel to rule on the matter. China is now working out the details of its new Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank with the 56 countries that have signed on to the project. China is expected to take a 25 to 30% stake in the new $100 billion lender, and India is likely to be the second largest shareholder. All in all, Asian countries will own between 72 and 75% of the bank, while European countries and other nations will own the remaining 25 to 28%. Korea is a member country of the new initiative. And the value of the Korean won against other key currencies hit a 7-year high in April. The won's so-called real effective exchange rate measured at 115.34 points last month, the highest level since February 2008, according to data from the Bank for International Settlement. This is good news for Koreans who travel overseas or buy lots of imports, but bad news for the country's exporters. While the Japanese yen rose in April by 0.7% to the US dollar, the won rose 3 times faster at 2.2%. Earlier this month, Google opened its 3rd campus operation in the world and the first in Asia right here in Seoul. Now, it's a school to help entrepreneurs discover new opportunities and models for growth, and expectations are already high for the results Campus Seoul might produce. Today, on our front page segment, we'll take a look at what awaits new startups and the brains behind them.
Google Campus. It's a place where young entrepreneurs can learn how to take on the global market with their fledgling startup business. The first campus opened 3 years ago in London, and the second in Tel Aviv. Campus London has so far helped launch some 2,000 startup firms with 40,000 members, drumming up investment worth $110 million. And the third campus recently opened its doors in Seoul. Back in 2013, President Park Geun-hye met with Google's CEO, and she also took part in the opening ceremony for Campus Seoul.
저는 이와 같은 긍정적 변화의 움직임을 잘 살려서 우리나라를 세계에서 가장 역동적으로 성장하는 글로벌 창업 허브로 발전시켜 나가고자 합니다.
Several factors are considered when opening a Google campus, one of them being how high a concentration there is of entrepreneurs and startup companies. Also, are Google staff available to provide mentoring and education? What made Seoul an attractive destination for the new campus?
서울이 아시아의 테크허브이고 굉장히 스타트업의 활동이 많고 또 투자자들의 활동도 많고 우수한 개발자도 많고 하기 때문에 그리고 또 구글의 로컬에 있는 구글 코리아의 많은 리소스가 스타트업들에게 도움이 된다고 판단을 했기 때문에 저희가 서울에 설립을 하게 됐습니다.
Google says Seoul was selected because of its high concentration of startups in the area. Especially when it comes to the Taehanro Strip in the Gangnam-gu district, where Campus Seoul is situated, 7 startup support centers were launched just this year. It was also the heart of Korea's startup boom back in the 90s. With its infrastructure that has developed over the years to accommodate the needs of new businesses, it now boasts a densely packed area of startup companies. Campus Seoul is roughly 2,000 square meters. It comes with lecture halls, a device lab to test new gadgets, nap rooms, and baby care facilities. Aside from areas designated for specific firms, the rest is open to the public upon free membership. Currently, 8 startup companies are operating out of the campus. One thing that ties them together is their ambition for the global market.
인재 채용인데 그 인재 채용을 글로벌하게 진행하고 싶은 그런 미션이 있거든요. 근데 구글이 가지고 있는 어떤 글로벌 네트워크나 아니면 구글이 그 스타트업들을 통해서 지원하고자 하는 어떤 비전하고 저희가 맞았던 것 같고요. 그래서 저희도 이제 구글의 어떤 글로벌 네트워크나 그 환경들을 이용해서 많은 인재들을 해외에도 취업시키고 또 해외에 있는 인재들이 우리나라에 들어올 수 있게 해주고 이렇게 하고 싶습니다.
저희는 셋 다 엔지니어다 보니까 마케팅이라든지 기획 이런 부분들에는 굉장히 약점이 있습니다. 다른 팀과 편하게 밥 먹으면서 그냥 지나가면서 얘기하다 보면은 많은 인사이트를 얻기도 하고 플런티라는 회사는 모르지만 구글은 모르는 사업이기 때문에 굉장히 신뢰가 올라가는 것을 느꼈었고 이런 것들은 돈으로 환산할 수 없는 큰 가치라고 생각합니다.
In the future, Campus Seoul will also run Google Campus Exchange programs which provide networking opportunities with other campuses. It will also operate Campus for Moms to alleviate the burden of childcare for mothers and a number of other mentoring programs. Campus Seoul is expected to provide the foundation for Korean startups to head overseas. But this isn't the first support system in place for Korean firms. The government has already been providing aid with so-called creative economy centers established around the country. These centers foster exchanges among big and small businesses with the hopes to create a stronger and systematic network.
또 우리나라의 강점이 있다라고 생각을 하고 있고요. 대표적인 게 제가 보기엔 융합. 최근에 이제 핀테크라 해가지고 금융과 IT 이제 융합된 그런 그 기술 내지는 산업 분야가 좀 핫하잖아요. 그러니까 이런 분야처럼 이제 새로운 분야들이 많이 나올 수 있는 그런 토양이 지금 돼 있고 정부도 이제 그거를 계속 키우려고 노력을 하고 있어요. 아까 구글에도 있었지만 나름대로 이제 그런 차원에서 볼 때는 한국의 그 스타트업 기업들의 출현이 하다실 것 같다.
Many people find great relief in seeing their monthly paychecks come in, but just as quickly as the money comes in, for most of us, it disappears even faster. So where does all the money go? Well, today on In Numbers, we'll take a look at the monthly spending habits of the average office worker here in Korea. Let's take a look. Now, according to Job Korea, of 848 surveyed male and female office workers, the average married worker spends a little under $1,450 a month, while a single worker, not much over $600. But where exactly does that money go? A close look at their spending habits shows that for the average office worker, over 70% of their income goes to food and beverage expenses. The next biggest portion of their paycheck goes to transportation costs and/or vehicle maintenance. And the third largest portion is spent on communication, taking up over 30% of their budget. Now, towards the bottom of the list, for married couples, 9.4% goes to childcare expenses, and for the average worker, savings comes in at the bottom of the list, averaging at 12.5% of their wages. But when asked about what they're most regretful about spending money on, it seems like entertainment comes in on top of that list at 35%, trailed by communication and rent. And at the bottom of that list comes food and cash gifts. So although some have voiced reluctance about spending money on food and beverages, For the most part, it looks like spending to keep their stomachs happy seems to be relatively all right. That's it for today's In Numbers. We'll be back again next time with more information about today's ever-changing economy.
Time now for our Bits and Biz segment. And of course, trends in business evolve rapidly by the day. And here with the most eye-catching stories is Mizarang. Hello, Mizarang.
Hello.
So what do you have for us first today?
Well, the first story I have for you is about the world's largest group of billionaires. At the recent Asian Leadership Conference held in Seoul, Rupert Hugeworth of the monthly Hurun report, which is best known for its list of the super rich, described the key features of this growing group in China. Number one, they're self-made. Only about a third of the world's billionaires can boast achieving this feat, and of those, 61% are Chinese, while only 16% are from the US. Number two, the list is constantly changing. Whereas Samsung Electronics chair Lee Gun-hee heads Korea's richest list for the 11th straight year, and Bill Gates topped the US list for 16 of the past 21 years, China's richest man has changed 12 times in the last 16 years. And lastly, they value Western education. Roughly 80% send their children abroad to study, 46% to North America, and 32% to the UK. Next up, it's been 50 years since Seoul designated May 19 as Invention Day, and to celebrate, the Korea Intellectual Property Office compiled a selection of noteworthy creations to date. In the 50s, ophthalmologist Kong Byung-woo developed a Korean typewriter to help his students take better notes. Based on an ergonomic 3-set system, it was the first Korean character Hangul keyboard to come into widespread use, but was eventually phased out in favor of the 2-set system. Other ideas have survived longer. The exfoliating Italy towels from the 60s are still found in most Korean homes, as are pre-mixed coffee sachets from the 70s and kimchi fridges from the 80s.
Mizarang, sticking with the instant coffee mix, I understand this is doing quite well worldwide.
That's right. The convenience and the ease of transport make them popular not only in Korea, but also abroad in China, Australia, and even in coffee-producing countries in South America. It's estimated that over $80 million worth are exported each year, and that's as of 2013, according to the Food Ministry. Now, in a similar fashion, some Korean snacks are picking up in popularity around the world. Take a look at this report.
It's so good. Oh, I love it.
They're nice. They're really nice.
Actually, yeah, it tastes pretty good.
9 out of 10. That was awesome.
My life will not be complete unless I can have this regularly.
Hop onto YouTube and you'll find hundreds of videos of Korean people trying Korean snacks and beverages for the first time. Seeing clips like these, many others around the world are also giving it a go. So which snacks exactly are the most popular outside of Korea?
Here are the top 3 by sales. Coming in third is a salt-sprinkled sweet cracker Ace. Second is banana-flavored milk, which comes in with an overwhelming dose of the taste, smell and color of a real banana. And the number 1 global bestseller? Choco pie. Exports of these golden trio are rising each year. Choco pie alone topped $250 million in 2013. Meanwhile, Korean ginger tea and snacks made from rice and dried liver are being lapped up by the health conscious in the US. Demand for ginger tea has soared because it's said to produce more inner heat for the body, while rice and seaweed snacks are being marketed as low-calorie and gluten-free alternatives to traditional American snacks.
Mizarang, of course, choco pie, that's something very easily adaptable, I think, to Western tastes. Dried seaweed, maybe another question, but yes, certain segments of the public, I think, would go for that abroad. How are Korean snacks overall faring overseas?
Well, the entire cake and confectionery industry in Korea is booming at the moment. Exports have climbed 72% over a 5-year period, from around $250 million in 2008 to $430 million in 2013. China is the main destination, followed by by the US and the ASEAN region.
What else do you have for us today, Mizarang?
Well, the next story is about the latest drive campaign to sell gold for the country. Now, one of the reasons Korea was able to quickly pay off its IMF debt in the wake of the 1997 Asian financial crisis was the 227 tons of gold citizens sold to the national treasury. It's been almost 20 years now, but a similar situation seems to be unfolding in Vietnam. Hanoi Central Bank SBV announced plans to buy up idle gold held by individuals and organizations to boost its forex reserves and finance socio-economic development projects. It's the latest in a series of efforts over the last few years to wean citizens off their dependence on gold. Millions of Vietnamese choose gold to store their wealth due to both a cultural value and a widespread lack of confidence in the national currency dong. It's estimated that up to $19 billion worth of the precious metal is privately held. Now, this is more than half of the country's foreign reserve value, which at the end of last year was around $35 billion. Policymakers are calling for an expansion this year as a trade deficit is likely.
Mizarang, this was a very big deal in Korea in 1997. I think when we look back at the Asian financial crisis, in many ways what was unique to Korea was not just the crisis itself, but the willingness of the public here to turn out, hand over gold when more supplies were needed. That's a legacy, in fact. I wonder how the Vietnamese public will respond and how they'll be remembered 20 years hence.
That's right, we'll have to see.
Thank you very much, Mizarang, for your report.
You're welcome.
This year, one of Korea's sectors has seen a surplus of $100 billion in trade, drawing lots of attention. And this would be the parts and materials industry. There are, of course, a vast range of goods that fall into this field. And our Im Yoon-hee joins us now with more. Hello, Yoon-hee.
Hello, Hans. Nice to see you again. So it's absolutely right, the parts and material industry. This includes everything from the tiny screws used to put together mobile phones to liquid crystals used in LCD screens and even semiconductor components. Now, although they may be very small, they're very important to the development and advancement of Korea's economy, and performance has definitely been improving over the years. So let's take a closer look. Although some may be small in size, parts that make up larger products are essential to the industry, often being the underlying cause of big and small accidents if produced with defects. Faulty parts are often the reason for thousands of automobile recalls, and roughly half of plane accidents that occurred in the last 5 years are said to stem from part defects. Now, often, the parts industry is something that can easily be overlooked. But Korea has seen greater growth by advancing their parts and components sector thanks to advancements in homegrown technology. Now, as a result, this has helped push out the need for imported goods, and some Korean companies have even gained recognition for their developments and contributions to the Korean economy as a whole. KPF is a Korean company that exports car parts and other industrial supplies overseas. Last year, it posted $280 million in sales, and back in 2012, was handed an award for exports totaling over $100 million. The company supplied 1.2 million tons of tension control bolts that were used to build the London Olympic Stadium in 2012. For automotive parts, it focuses on enhancing precision in manufacturing some of the smallest parts that act as the final connectors in cars.
저희가 생산하는 제품 자체는 어떤 수명주기가 상당히 깁니다. 저희가 아직까지는 화스너 자동차 부품에 대해서 대체제가 아직 개발이 되지 않은 상황이기 때문에 저희가 안정적으로 기업을 유지할 수 있는 넓은 시장을 확보하고 있고요. 미국, 유럽, 그다음에 아시아 각국 전 세계 전 대륙에 거쳐서 지금 수출을 하고 있는 상황입니다.
Korea's parts and materials industry has seen growth in exports, and the country now ranks 6th in terms of outbound shipments. The sector is considered an integral part of the economy as it determines the quality of finished goods in the market.
소재 부품 산업은 제조업 제품의 뿌리이자 허리가 되는 산업이며 최근에 이제 세계적으로 완제품 생산 능력이 평준화되고 있기 때문에 특히 부가가치의 큰 포션을 차지하는 소재 부품의 중요성이 날로 커지고 있습니다.
One of the reasons why Korea's parts industry has managed to expand is because of the country's advancements in the IT sector. One of the leading cities in business, Gumi, played an integral role in developing the semiconductor, LCD, and LED industries by creating a 3D display parts and materials support center. According to trade figures, the country's parts and materials industry posted more than $100 billion in trade surplus, becoming a much stronger growth engine in exports.
소재 부품 산업의 빠른 성장으로 인해서 한국은 2011년 세계 5대 소재 부품 수출 강국으로 도약했으며 특히 반도체를 중심으로 한 전자부품 산업에서의 무역흑자가 크게 발생하면서 전체 무역흑자의 폭이 확대되고 있습니다.
Now, currently here in Korea, you'll see a lot of special development zones dedicated to the parts and material industry. Now, I'm here in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do province, where there are a cluster of factories dedicated to automotive parts as well as semiconductor and LCD components. But it's not just these factories. Research facilities are also partnering up, taking advantage of these new developments. As Korean firms continually secure original technology to produce parts and materials in petrochemicals, electronics, automobiles, and textiles, it has been able to land more deals with firms in other countries. The country's dependence of Japanese parts and materials has dipped since 2010, hitting the lowest point last year. But experts say more work needs to be done to develop technology indigenous to companies at home.
핵심 소재 부품 기술 같은 경우에는 아직도 이제 독일이나 일본 같은 선진국에 조금 기술력이 취약한 부분이 많이 있습니다. 지금 그 격차가 점점점 줄어들고 있는 추세인데, 그래서 실제로 작년 2014년 기준으로 최초로 그 소재 부품 수입 의존도가 10%대로 줄어드는 효과를 좀 봤습니다. 핵심 소재 부품에 대한 기술력은 아직 조금 취약한 상태여서 계속적인 관심과 투자가 필요한 상황이라고 할 수도 있습니다.
Yoonhee, this is really fascinating to watch. The individual components, of course, are very small, bolts and screws.
Exactly.
And nuts, not very big, but all very important to making the bigger items, even airplanes, work in a very important industry now. $100 billion US dollars is a lot of money. How did this industry gain momentum to the point where it's producing these kinds of trade surpluses today?
Right, Han. So since the 1960s, the Korean economy saw quite a bit of success in terms of the manufacturing sector. Now, during that time, Korea produced things like textiles, electronics, metal products, and from there, the production of parts and material industry naturally developed. Now, exports started opening new markets in the 80s, but it was really not until 2001 with the introduction of new legislation that gave a huge boost to that industry. Now, measures were put in place by the government to protect the industry, which is why it was able to develop relatively unscathed by economic crises.
Yoonhee, we reported on this program not so long ago that Samsung Electronics plans to build the world's largest chip plant down in Pyeongtaek, about 50 kilometers south of Seoul. So the parts and supply industry also figures very much into the high-tech economy. We're not talking just about semiconductors, but the parts that go into them.
Exactly. You're absolutely right, Han. So although things like metal, LCD, LED, electronics, and other parts industries are important as well, the semiconductor components industry is one that greatly contributes to the country's parts export, and it's one that generates high added value as well. Now, with the continual development of Korea's parts and material industry, experts are predicting that there's going to be a lot more opportunities in terms of growth and jobs as well in the future.
Well, we'll just have to see, Yoonhee, how this industry continues to grow and what kinds of ripple effects it creates for other sectors.
Precisely.
Thank you very much, Yoonhee, for your report.
You're very welcome.
And that will wrap things up this week here on Money Matters. We hope you enjoyed the program. Of course, we'll keep bringing you plenty of stories as they continue to unfold in Asia and give you a view of the ever-changing landscape of business in the region. I'm Hans Schadl. Thank you for watching.